Continuation from Part 1. Check out previous episode 8 if you haven't already.
So what I want to say, the whole point of this is, you see, we did all the work, we put in the money, we did the effort, we increased the value of the building. We should have been getting between $675 and $833, at the low end $675. We happened to have the same exact appraiser appraise the building when we applied for a refinance as the appraiser who appraised the building when we purchased it. So in 2020, we purchased it. We had appraiser, and I'm not meaning the same appraisal company, the same exact person in 2020 appraised the property when we bought it. They saw the status, the stature that the property was in. They saw all the rundown rooms. They saw the units. They saw the condition of the property at that point in time, which was not good. And then they happen to be the same exact person to appraise the property when we refinanced in 2022. And he looked at the address and he said, oh, that building, I just appraised it. Right. And so what did he do? We bought for $360. We submitted an entire packet outlining all the work that we had done. We included before and after pictures. We've included before and after rents. We included a list of the scope of work on all the things that we had done, and all the certificate of occupancy, and just everything that we had done, and the amount of capital that we had put into the building, into elevating it to a higher standard and a more livable condition. He appraised the building, like I said, I'll say it again. We purchased for $360. He appraised the building 2 years later at $395,000. That's a $35,000 increase in value when we had put in $80,000 worth of work and increased the NOI by 250% in an increasing market. So why did the appraiser happen to just throw out a number? I don't know. I have no clue. Your guess is as good as mine. We obviously did not look at any of the documentation that we submitted to show and prove what we had done to improve the building. And maybe he was an old school appraiser who just wasn't up to date, up to times with what was happening in the market and how hot the market had become and how much values were increasing. And maybe that was he just assumed there's no way this building increased by this much, by more than $35,000 in 2 years. There's no way. It just doesn't happen. Maybe that's what's his thought process. I don't know. Like I said, your guess is as good as mine. But I do know that he came back with that evaluation. The lender said, no, you must have the wrong building. There's a mistake here. Because they know how much that we put into it. Our property management company said, no, you must have made a mistake. That's the wrong building. You must have appraised the wrong building. Like, this can't be right. Because they also knew how much we put into it. And my partner was like, hey, no, sorry, something's wrong here. This can't be right. So everybody was getting at this appraiser, asking and pushing for a reevaluation of his appraisal. Now, there was a big problem. My partner and I were using the capital from the refi because we were going to cash out. We were planning to use the capital from this appraisal, from this refinance, to purchase another building. And the only problem with that is that the purchase was happening the same week as this appraisal came in, and the refi was supposed to close. So it did not give us a lot of time, actually no time, to submit an appropriate, like, higher level kind of what's the word? We didn't have time to submit a claim against his appraisal report to have him do a full reevaluation, or have the company as a whole like just maybe send a different appraisal and start the process over. We didn't have time to wait for that to happen because we had to close this refinance that week. And so my partner, I don't know how he got on the phone with this guy, but he ended up talking to this guy on the phone, um, and saying, "Hey, we need to at least get at." I think he was asking for like 600. We at least need to get this to 600. We at least need to get this to 600, right? Because we knew even at that we'd be able to cash out, use the proceeds to close on the next building, and still both walk away with capital in our pockets, right? And that was 600 was a fair, like low end evaluation. So he came back. Um, the next day, he stayed up all night. This was, I believe, a Wednesday before we were closing. He stayed up all night redoing his evaluation. He came back Thursday morning with a new appraisal amount of $520,000. So that's still way lower than what we needed. Even 600 was taking a haircut, right? We really should have been 675 at the low end. That's at a 7.4 cap. We should have been at 675. Really, we could have been. My estimations when I was doing the math is really we should have been like 750, between 7 and 750. Really should have been where we should have been at, right? So we got 520. The 520 came in on Thursday. Our loan officer was able to close the refinance, and Friday was the scheduled closing of the next building we were buying. So it was down to the 23rd.75th hour. That was so close of a haircut, right? It was just super close. So that 520 was just enough for us to pull out money to close on the new building. And also we had to bring in a little bit to the closing table. So not a ton, but we shouldn't have had to bring anything. Um, and we should have walked away with money. But at the end of the day, we were still able to close the next building. We only had to bring a small amount to closing. I feel like it was probably between 8 and 10,000 that we needed to bring to closing. So it sucked, but we got it done. We got another asset under our belt, and we weren't able to fully realize the capital, the equity from that first building, which would have been great. But actually now that building is cash flowing very well. And in hindsight, if we had taken like maxed out our refi on that building at the time, then our cash flow wouldn't have been as high because we would have had a higher debt service payment. So I guess it all kind of works around in a big circle, and you have to strategize when it comes to, do you want to max the value if you're doing a refi to pull out equity? Do you want to max that out? Or do you want to have maximal cash flow? Because you can't really have both. If you're going to max out the equity, your debt service is going to be higher. So that's going to eat away a little bit at your cash flow. Unless your cash flow is super phenomenal out of this world and you still have a good amount. But regardless, if you have higher debt service, you're going to have less cash flow, no matter which way you cut it. So whether that cash flow that you have, is less, is still good, that's a different story. So what other lesson do I have from this experience for you listening? The lesson is this: I highly believe in a refinance and roll strategy. That's how I've been growing my portfolio so far. I've been using equity from one building. Once I have that equity and can access it, I've been pulling that out and using that as a down payment on purchasing the next building, right? So I highly believe in that strategy. And that is a way a lot of people can grow if they don't have capital, or enough capital to save for another down payment, or they're not raising capital, or whatever it is. The issue is, next time, if you're doing that, please schedule the closing for the purchase at least a month or two after the scheduled closing for the refinance. Give yourself some space, because if you have to put in some type of documentation to try to have an appraisal redone and reevaluated because it did not come in at the value that makes sense, and you kind of have to fight that. You want to have the time and the space to be able to fight that appropriately and get the valuation that you deserve so that you can use the equity that you need to use for your future purchase. But if those closings are neck and neck, then you're not going to be able to have the time to actually fight that appraisal, right? So you can get, and so that's something that people don't know. Once you get an appraisal, it's not final. You can get an appraisal reevaluated. You can have it resubmitted. You can fight against an appraisal value if you think that that is not accurate, right? So you can do that. That is possible. Appraisal is not final. So if you do need to fight the appraisal, you want to make sure you have enough time before whatever your next investment is so that you're not taking a valuation that is lower than what you deserve to have. And even if on paper, even if you're not going to max that refi out, even if you still want to take a lower refi, just enough to close on whatever the next building is or whatever next investment is, but on paper, you still want to have that higher valuation because now that can add officially to your net worth. And that might help with other lending options when people can maybe use collateral from your other building because you have so much extra equity and use that to help you get a loan to purchase, another building. So there's so much more you can do when you have that extra equity and net worth there, even if you're not going to utilize all of it at that same time. So overall, that was just like a story that I had. I think another reason that also happened is because even though the market that I'm investing in is like a good size market, it's okay. It's less than 1 million people for the entire MSA. But because it's a tertiary market, there are a limited number of service providers for any particular niche and service that you need. So you don't have, 10 different appraisal companies that you can go to and talk to, or at least I know the bank is supposed to deal with appraisal companies, but even the bank's options are less. They don't have that many appraisal companies to work with, right? You have to go with who's there in the market. And if there's one or two or three, then those are the ones that you're stuck with. And that's like the same for property management companies. That's the same for contractors. That's the same for maybe attorneys that service that area. But any like locality specific type of service professionals, if you are in a tertiary market, more than likely you're going to have a limited supply of options for when you're looking to service your building. So in this case, it just happened to be happenstance that the same exact person at the same exact appraisal company is the one who evaluated our building for appraisal on both purchase and on the refinance. So we did learn a lesson from that, and we had to refinance the next building, the second building we bought. Actually, this year we had to refinance that. And from this experience, we asked the bank out of the two appraisal companies that they were considering, which one had the better reputation when it came to giving fair appraisals. And the bank told us which one. And so we said, okay, actually, that one was a longer waiting period and a higher price point than the other one. But we didn't care. We decided, okay, we're going to wait the extra week and we're going to pay the extra $500 to $1,000. I don't remember how much more it was. We're going to pay the extra money and we're going to wait the extra time to get the appraisal done from a company that is known for giving fair appraisals, right? So we waited because we understood the importance of having the reputation of that appraisal company precede them. And that situation actually turned out very well for us. And maybe I will share that appraisal story at another time. But for right now, I just wanted to give you a heads up if you're looking at tertiary markets to make sure that when it comes to appraisals, that you get what you pay for. So make sure you go with appraisal companies that have the better reputation for performance and for fair appraisals. And also don't schedule your closing for the refinance so close to the closing for the purchase if you're going to use refinance money to acquire a new property or asset. Okay. So I hope you learned something from the experience that I went through. We still have not refinanced that building again. So we still probably have a few $100,000 worth of equity stuck in that building that wasn't fairly evaluated at the beginning, but we do know that it's there. And real estate, again, is the long game. And you just will be able to tap that at another point in time when we're ready to expand again. So until next time, hopefully this was helpful, and I'll see you again.